Welcome to Chalk and Code,
where the science of learning meets modern technology.
We're bringing together entrepreneurs, product leaders, researchers, and advocates
to spark ideas, challenge assumptions, and shape the future of learning.
Welcome to Chalk and Code. Today, we are joined by Jamie Forrest, a co-founder and CTO of CourseMojo. This is an AI-powered, curriculum-aligned teaching assistant designed to support teachers and close the achievement gaps. Jamie leads the technical strategy behind Mojo, overseeing everything from AI infrastructure and curriculum alignment to data privacy and responsible AI safeguards. Alongside co-founder and co-CEO, he has helped scale CourseMojo from serving 7,000 students to over 60,000 students, while staying true to good teaching. Jamie's work sits at the intersection of AI ethics, education, and pragmatic innovation. Welcome, Jamie. We're so excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Before we dive in, we would love to hear a little bit more about you and what got you into the EdTech space. So I'll turn it over to you to maybe give us a little brief preview of that.
Yeah, I previously worked at Apple right before my job at CourseMojo, and I worked in the Siri part of the company, and so very immersed in kind of AI and how to do AI engineering, right? So to use kind of AI models to build products for people. And had never worked in EdTech before, but right out of college, when I graduated, I worked for a year in a Catholic school in New York, in Harlem, teaching some classes, writing grants for the school, and then had a long gap in my career where I did nothing related to education. And during COVID, actually, I have two kids. During COVID, I saw firsthand kind of how the online education space was really not ready for the challenge of online learning. I saw it with my 10-year-old at the time struggling, and I really started to think about how technology could be used in service of education. My mother was a teacher and a principal in the New York City public schools, and my partner, my wife, is a professor at university where we live. So I'm sort of surrounded by education in a lot of ways, but had never really made it a part of my career until had this experience with COVID and started talking with Eric Westendorf, one of the co-CEOs of CourseMojo, about some ideas we had around education and technology. And over the course of those COVID conversations, it became clear that we wanted to work together on something in this field. And right around that time too, kind of coming out of COVID, was when the first iteration of these large language models came out, where they were truly mind-boggling, the results that you could get from them. And so we started to think about how that could be used in education, and CourseMojo kind of came out of that.
What a story. Oh, very cool. Very cool. It's nice when you can tie it back to something personal like that. So, helping your own children. I hear that story a lot now that I've been working with lots of EdTech companies. So, well, I will jump into some of the questions here, specifically about CourseMojo. So one of the big realities of building an EdTech is that the smartest technical choice isn't always the most ambitious one. CourseMojo hit a moment where continuing to build everything in-house no longer match maybe the pace or the scale of the mission. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what that looked like for you. So taking us back to that moment, what started to feel hard or unsustainable about managing AI workflows in-house?
Yeah. So it's not so much that it felt hard or unsustainable. It was more that, so we had actually started building the support for AI workflows in-house, just completely custom, code. One of our engineers was working on it, and we were talking about what our requirements would be and what this thing had to do. And that was based, by the way, on many months of iterative work, where we would start with like the smallest idea, build that, and see what the frictions were, and then build the next thing. So it was a very kind of MVP type iterative process of development. And as we worked on it, it became clearer and clearer what we needed to build. At around that same time, I attended an AI engineering conference in New York, and was going to the various the seminars that they had. And I was downstairs in the basement, which is where the vendors were all set up, and I was just kind of walking around seeing what was there. This was in 2020, early 2025. And I walked past something called Vellum, and I initially was like, whatever, it's just another tool. I kind of walked past it. And then I noticed that nobody was going up to the guy and talking to him. So I kind of felt a little bit bad. And I went up to the guy who was standing there and asked, what does it do? So he starts showing me, and it literally is the thing we're building. I'm looking at the screen and I'm like, this is what we are building. And you are 6 to 12 months ahead of us, right? Like, and by the way, that's not what Vellum does, is not our primary use case. Our primary use case is learning activities for schools. It's not building AI workflow tools, even though we knew we had to build that for ourselves. So I saw that on the screen, saw that it matched like exactly what we were building, reached out to them to get a fuller demo to kind of see what it could offer. And yeah, we just realized that ultimately we could either have 1 or 2 engineers on our side spend a year building this thing, which by the way, it's not just the year you spend building it, it's also the years after that that you then have to maintain it and fix bugs and provide support and all of that. Or we could use this thing that works, that does exactly what we need it to do. And because it's not our core product, it made sense to then use that for what we needed it for internally. And it doesn't provide, we still have a lot of engineering and development work that goes into other things in the platform that we offer, but it does fill in a huge gap of things we need to do to run our product without us having to build and maintain that whole piece of the system.
Yeah, would you say it sort of fast-tracked you in a way?
Yeah, it definitely helped us leapfrog because those 1 to 2 engineers, let's say, who are going to be building that can now spend all of their time building other things that are more core to our product.
Right. Makes total sense. Maybe a follow-up there. So were there any sort of trade-offs of buying instead of building that I guess were big call-outs for you that we could talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we actually, when we were first building it in-house, we sort of had this thought, well, maybe this could actually also be a product, right? You could imagine that it is a product in the form of Vellum, and there are other companies now doing it. So we did have the thought that like this could provide the company with another potential product area. And as a startup, we need to be constantly open-minded to. But on the other hand, the things that outweighed that are that we would spend so much more time building the core experience and the core product for education and for our students and teachers. And that would probably just be a distraction. Even if it ended up being a viable product, it's not really what the business is about. So we decided that trade-off was worth it.
Yeah. So maybe for founders who are listening deep in the weeds of building, what should they be asking themselves when they're at a similar crossroad?
Yeah, I think having a North Star of what your business is about and what your product is about, and what problem you are trying to solve, and also what your values are as a company will help you make decisions like that. Because you can always kind of take a step back and say, okay, if we were to pursue this versus just going out and buying it, is that going to be aligned with our North Star? Is that going to be aligned with our product vision? Is that going to be aligned with our business values? And if the answer to any or all of those is no, then you know what to do. So I think kind of situating those questions in kind of the core beliefs and core principles of the company is the best way to ultimately make hard decisions like that.
It's an excellent answer. All right, so getting into maybe our second topic here. So we're going to talk about AI, as you would imagine. So AI opens up lots of possibilities in education, but CourseMojo has taken a very intentional path using AI behind the scenes to support learning without taking over the role of the teacher. That philosophy reflects a deep commitment to keeping instruction grounded in what actually works in the classroom. So you made a very deliberate choice to keep AI mostly behind the scenes. Can you share how that philosophy took shape?
So actually, one of the core values of the company is that we believe that technology should be used in the service of people rather than the other way around. And kind of where that value came out of is, again, through my experience having kids. When our kids were really young and we were looking around at different preschools and elementary schools, we would tour some places where the first thing that they would showcase in the school is the technology. And they would say, we have smart boards in every classroom, and we have iPads for every student, or whatever the case may be. And even though I'm a software engineer and I'm very involved with technology, I'm old school in a lot of ways. I grew up, in the 80s, and a little bit in the 90s when tech was not as big of a part of our lives. And so I think back to my school where we had chalkboards. We didn't even have dry erase boards. We had chalkboards. If we had computers, they were in a special room called the computer lab, right? And you had 30 minutes a day or whatever where you could go on them. And when these schools would present their technology first like that, it always prompted the question in me of like, well, what is the technology for? It's great that you have iPads, it's great that you have smart boards, but what is it for? What are you doing with it in order to teach the kids better? And so when we founded CourseMojo, I had a strong belief that the technology shouldn't come first. The people should come first, the teachers, the students, and then the technology should be there to help them do what they're doing, but better. And so that's sort of our like, again, a core value of the company, that we see technology that way, and that has trickled down into how we build the product because we're constantly thinking about what this means for the people who are using it. And so in a sense, because of that value, it would never actually replace teachers. I think we also kind of related to that value have a belief that education and schools in general are about people coming together, and not machines or machines coming together with people. I hope that we never end up in a world where machines take over the job of teachers, because so much of the job of teaching is teaching how to be human, right? Not just information, but how to actually survive and thrive in the world as a human. And so I think for that you need other humans, but humans using AI are super powered, in a way, and not just with teaching, but with so many different fields these days. Humans combined with AI, in my opinion, that's a true superpower at this point. So that's kind of how we see it. We see it as a tool to help teachers, save time, but also just have better insights into what their students are doing, and give a better experience for students as well. Have them have an experience where their needs are met in a more personalized way than a teacher can give on their own.
Makes total sense. We all know there's a lot of pressure to use AI and to use it more and more, right? And maybe you have not run into this issue yet, but how do you decide where to draw that line, I guess? And are there any sort of fundamental things that you guys are focused on that to help make those kind of decisions?
The line between where to use AI and not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I will say it's important to redraw that line constantly, because as the tools evolve, that line needs to move. So compared to, say, 2022, when the first generation of these very capable large language models came out, the models now are capable of, reasoning about things, writing their own code in order to answer questions. So like at the beginning, if you asked it what's 2 plus 3, it may or may not give you the right answer. But these days it can write a Python program that can calculate what's 2 plus 3 and give you the right answer. So that line is constantly shifting. I would say our rubric for that is this thing that it's doing producing something of quality, and producing something that a human can't do, or it would take too much time to do. But again, that line is gonna be shifting almost every week these days as new models come out and new capabilities are introduced.
Right. And I would imagine like the needs of the teacher, right? Like it probably depends a fair amount on like what their expectations are, maybe what works for them, because that's going to change over time, I would imagine too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think part of the responsibility we have as education technology providers is not to make the teacher's job harder. And I think a lot of tools where the technology does come first before the person, it can actually make the teacher's job harder, because you're placing the burden on them to, you know, perform some function in service of the technology. Not only is that a friction for the person in that job, but it's a friction for the business as well. I mean, if you're asking people to do more work than they were doing before, it's not really going to get very far. Our job is to make it easier and or better for the person that's using it.
When you look ahead, what does responsible AI in education mean to you?
It's a tough question because, as you said, there's a lot of pressure to introduce AI into the classroom. I think that it's very easy, in quotes, easy to just throw an AI model in front of a person or a student and say, start exploring. But as we all know, the AI, these AI tools can be very easy to lead off the rails. So potentially, if a student is chatting with a large language model directly, does the teacher know that on the side they're talking about, football or whatever, or pizza or whatever, whatever else interests them? Are you going to monitor every student? And in general, the AIs are trained, the LLMs, I should say, are trained to be very deferential to the user. And so in a lot of cases, when you just stick a kid in front of an LLM, the model is trained to sort of do whatever the user wants it to do. And so if you say, I'm bored of this, let's talk about pizza, the model's going to be like, absolutely, let's talk about pizza, which, maybe that's relevant to what you're doing in school, but probably not. And so I think, our approach has been to be much more intentional about that and not just have it be a chat directly with an LLM, but using the LLM for functions in the software that are very, very targeted and specialized, so that you're not in a situation where the students can do whatever they want with the LLM. I think another problem is hallucination with LLMs in education specifically. I mean, it's a problem for them in general, but it's sort of exacerbated when you're talking about trying to teach students things. You could potentially be teaching them something that is made up. That is not good. And I think the LLMs over the past 3-4 years have gotten better at not hallucinating, but it's not a solved problem. And depending on how much context the LLM has about what you're trying to talk about or learn about, it may be better or worse, the hallucinations. So those are the two places I think in education and using AI that we have to be really intentional about. And we can't just throw kids in front of these machines, and teachers too, by the way. Getting back to what I was saying before, does a teacher have the time to type in to an LLM, create a lesson plan for me on the Treaty of Versailles, and then go and check the sources and check to see whether the LLM made up stuff about the Treaty of Versailles or like accurately presented the information? Did the LLM give you sources for all of its claims? Right? So there's like a rigor in education that has to happen that the LLMs are not necessarily trained for just yet, that I think we need to be intentional about when we start using it in education. Some of the models can give you sources, which is great, but you have to ask for them, right? You can. And then I've had experiences chatting with some LLMs where it'll make a claim and my spidey sense goes off and I say, that doesn't sound quite right. And I'll ask it for a source. I'll say, where did you get that information? And sometimes it'll be like, you're right, you got me. I don't have a source for it. So it's like, that's not a great experience for it. I mean, that's an understatement. It's a terrible experience in an educational context to be potentially giving information that is made up or slightly false. Our philosophy is that A, you can't just stick teachers and students in front of these LLM models and expect a good result. And B, the more human input you put into the process, the better the quality is going to be in the end, even if you're still using AI to produce the content and to help the students with their work.
Getting into our next line of questioning, I guess. So we talked a little bit about that human touch and why that's very important, but we also need to talk about like scaling and why that matters. So scaling learning without losing that human touch. One of the things that stands out about Mojo is that it's designed to bring students into the classroom conversation. I know that's like a big push, not to pull them away from it. So as the platform has scaled, maintaining that human-centered approach has been just as important as expanding reach. As you guys have grown, how have you stayed anchored to the idea that Mojo supports the classroom discussion rather than replacing it?
Yeah, so the sort of main product that we offer is, you can imagine if the worksheet that the teacher gave you in a classroom, we all had them growing up. Imagine if that worksheet could actually have a conversation with you, the student. But not only that, imagine if the worksheets then could go, if you stack them in a pile, could go then to the teacher and have a conversation with the teacher about the work. And so one of the things that we provide is, once you have the student work in there from going through these learning activities, we take that work and we feed it back into the LLM to provide tools for the teacher to then lead his or her discussion afterwards. So what are some highlights of the student work that you would like to bring out in the discussion? What are some problem spots that the entire class was having on this one question, right? So highlight this in your discussion. We also have a tool that can look at the student work and suggest groupings of the students. So, I want to put the students in groups with mixed skill levels. We have a tool that says, okay, put student A with student B and student C, and that's going to be a great group because student A really has mastery over this lesson, while student C is struggling a little bit, and they're going to be able to help each other. So the software, the tools there are there not just to, automatically tell the teacher what grade to give the student, but it's actually to help facilitate what happens after the worksheet is done in the classroom. By the way, there's lots of rules around privacy and especially with student data. And so when we send that student work to the LLM, we send it completely anonymously. And then when it comes back from the LLM, we sort of, on our side, de-anonymize it so the teacher can know, okay, this student, should be paired with this student. But the LLM never knows about the names of the students or anything personal about them. So that's part of the innovation we're providing there for those tools.
We are going to talk a little bit more about, I'm probably going to ask you a few more questions about that. But you talk a lot about like confidence and participation, kind of learning in that small sort of group setting. What does that look like when Mojo is really working in a classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this is when I think about this aspect of the product, it gives me chills sometimes, because it's really something that couldn't exist without this kind of technology. Think back to when you were in school. I don't know what kind of student you were, but I was the kind of student that answered the questions. I always raised my hand and wanted to answer the questions. But there were lots of kids in class who'd never raised their hand. Why didn't they raise their hand? Maybe they were shy. Maybe they didn't know the answer. Maybe they were 6 weeks behind and were like completely lost. But in that situation, does the teacher call on those students? Rarely, because the teacher probably doesn't want to embarrass the students in front of the class, right? So you have this whole subset of a classroom that is not engaged with what's going on for many different reasons. And in your schooling, did you ever experience a student like that who put their hand up and said, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, I have no idea what's going on. Can you back up a second and help explain to me what you're talking about, because I have no idea what's happening? In my experience, I never saw a student put up their hand to say, I don't know the answer. Or even if the teacher calls on the student, very rarely is a student going to say, I don't know. And what Mojo enables is for that student to say, I don't know to the question and get the help that they need to get from I don't know to I do know. That's like the magical part of this, because some students in the class are going to be fine. They're going to see that question. They'll answer it right away. Some students, maybe they need a little bit of help to get to the answer. And then some students just don't know. But because we're using AI and the AI has all of the context around, what the activity is about, what the question is that's being answered, the AI can then come in and say, take a look back at paragraph 2. Maybe there was a sentence you missed in there. And then maybe the kid misses that sentence. And maybe then Mojo comes back and says, well, the wording in that sentence is, XYZ. What does that wording mean in terms of this question? So there's all this scaffolding that can happen as part of this software that it would be essentially impossible for a teacher to give every single student. And so, yeah, just the thought of that student who doesn't know being able to say, I don't know to their laptop and not have it be seen by all of their friends and not having it be seen by the teacher. Well, the teacher does get to see it. So the teacher gets to see all their work, but they don't have to have that moment of embarrassment in the classroom where they just have no answer to what's going on. And the software can then help them through the struggle that they're having.
Yeah. I was a student that did not raise my hand, but often knew the answer. But
So you would do great on this then.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shifting a little bit to like maybe that teacher perspective. How do you help teachers see Mojo as something that supports them? I don't know if you've like encountered any sort of pushback, and maybe not seeing it as something that is already adding to their full plate of things to do.
So there's a few answers I could give there. One is that we have several different customers as a business. Okay, so we sell directly into schools and school districts. So in terms of who is signing the checks and paying the bill, it's the school district and the school. Then we have the students who are using our software to learn. So they are a customer of ours as well. But fundamentally, in terms of like product priorities, we see the teachers as our primary customer because they are the ones who, if they are dissatisfied, if they don't see this tool as useful to them, it's going to be they're either not going to use it or they're going to be frustrated and angry when they do use it. So we prioritize the teacher experience above all of the other things. It's not that we don't prioritize the other things, but we want to nail that teacher experience. And we give them tools like I was describing in order to, essentially make it possible to do things in their classroom that they weren't able to do before. In addition to what I described before, we give them a real-time dashboard so that they can see as the students are working, is there one student who's just not making progress? Or is there one student that is stuck on a certain question? And so they can quickly then look at this dashboard in real time and identify which students are struggling and go directly to that student and try to help them. Or maybe they have a co-teacher and they say, you know what, look, Philip over there is having trouble. Can you go see what his issue is? And so this is also something, again, not really possible before a tool like this. It's getting a view like that, a bird's eye view of your classroom while the students are doing their work without having to circle through all the tables, right? Without having to like walk around and stop at every kid's desk. So that's part of it too. And, I think in our experience, there are many, many teachers who are very skeptical about this when they first hear about it. They're like, I don't need this. My classroom is running fine. Why do I need AI? Why do I need any of this? One of the things that really distinguishes CourseMojo from other education companies that are doing AI is that we very closely align our content to the curriculum that is happening in the school. And so it's very easy for the teacher to kind of build his or her weekly schedule around the curriculum that they're using and using Mojo to do it, because we have unit 1, module 1, here's the content for you for that. Unit 3, module 2, here's the content for that. So we're trying to make it so that it's like, it just sort of flows naturally out of the curriculum that they're already using rather than being some other thing they have to integrate.
That's very smart. Is there, I imagine there's like some ramp up time. I imagine you all offer training, things like that, and then support and all. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for the teacher, I guess?
Yeah, we have a professional development program as part of the company that will go into the school and train the teachers on the software, kind of show them how it does integrate into your curriculum, show you how to use that dashboard in real time, show you the value that you will get if your students are using it out of some of the insights that we give you. Like I talked before, like where we take all of the student work and we say, okay, now show me where the students are struggling. Show me where, highlight some exemplary student work. Once they see it, all of that skepticism goes away. So part of our challenge is like, we have to get it in front of people. But once we do, and people really see how effective this thing is, they do tend to buy into it pretty quickly. So that's nice to see. But yeah, we run professional development, and then even after that professional development happens, we have a whole team around support. So communicating with teachers, getting their feedback, getting their feature requests and suggestions. If there are bugs that people are seeing, we try to be very proactive about maintaining that communication so that the teachers feel like, the company is actually trying to get their needs met, as opposed to just, here's this thing, go use it, have fun.
Right. Or the district bought this, so we have to, or something like that. Well, that feels like the right thing, the right move. So we talked a little bit about trust, privacy, and doing the right things by students. As CourseMojo has expanded into more districts, more classrooms, questions of data privacy and trust have probably become more important, I imagine, to you all. So as you've grown, how has your thinking about data and responsibility evolved?
It's funny. It hasn't really evolved because once you talk about providing software for a school, even if it's one school or one classroom in a school, which it was for us, a couple of years ago as we started to release this product, you have to deal with the privacy implications right away. It's not like you can be, you know, uh, it's not like you can be a little bit fudgy with the rules. Even if it's one student, you gotta like it's the privacy is an important part of it. So we've really built that in from the very beginning, and the thinking hasn't really evolved. Actually, it's just kind of we have a core set of rules that we apply to how we treat student data, and no matter how many schools we're in, we just kind of keep applying that rule to our systems. So, one fundamental rule is we never send PII, personally identifiable information, to LLMs, to third-party LLMs. That's a rule that some of our schools explicitly state, but that's a rule that as a company we have. We just don't. We send them student work, but we don't send them names. We don't send them email addresses. We don't send them phone numbers, things like that. And then another fundamental rule is that our production systems where the student PII is housed are treated in a special way, essentially, and access to those systems is limited and on a need to have basis, right? So we have lots of other systems that are for testing and evaluation and trying things out. We never put student PII into those systems. It stays just siloed essentially in one database table in our production systems. And if we do want to take some of the production data and test things on it, we anonymize it completely. And so yeah, we've sort of built that in from the get-go. That's just part of the way we build the software, because even if it's hitting one student, it's very important that we keep their data private.
Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, it sounds like you are doing the right thing, but do you feel like, I don't know, should states or the schools or whom I guess should be having the conversation about how to use AI responsibly and how to, what does that look like from your perspective, or who should be giving that to, I don't know, that guideline?
Sure. I mean, we do have laws on the books. FERPA and COPPA are in place to kind of guide some of these decisions. And at this point, that's probably the best thing to use. And so then you have to make sure that every processor you're using abides by those same laws, right? So if I'm sending this out to OpenAI, I have to make sure that OpenAI is abiding by COPPA and FERPA rules. My suggestion, I guess, at a high level would be make sure that these AI providers are giving you the assurances that you need to follow those laws that have to be followed. And sometimes that means actually paying for the service, right? Like, so a lot of these AI companies will offer a free tier that doesn't provide those same kinds of assurances. But if you pay them, they will provide those assurances. So you have to really, you have to make sure that the providers you're using or the tier that you're using at the provider that you're using is providing those assurances for you, and not just using any old model that is out there, because there are models coming from China that are just that anyone can use. There's models coming from companies that are less trustworthy than OpenAI or Anthropic or Google. You can't have it be the Wild West. You really have to do your due diligence and make sure that the companies are that their terms of service are in line with what you need as a school.
Okay, so if you could leave ed tech leaders with one takeaway about protecting students while scaling AI, what would that be?
I think just building it in from the very beginning. I think it's tempting when you make a startup to cut corners and say, we'll get to that later. But when you're dealing with children and you're dealing with strict privacy requirements like we're dealing with in schools, it's best to just build that in as a company value and culture from the very beginning. And so that every step of the way, if something takes a little bit longer because you have to do it in a way that safeguards privacy, it's not only worth it, it's actually necessary by law, right? So rather than thinking you can cut corners when you're small and like not on people's radars, just do it at the beginning. And that way it doesn't feel expensive later on either, because that's just the way you do things.
And like you said, it can give the district that level of trust, right?
Exactly.
I will not ask the question before, because it's more like, what should they be looking for with companies that are coming in to try to do these sales pitches and things like that, because their responsibility is to these children.
Yeah, in my experience, actually, the schools tend to be very good about asking the right questions. And there's certainly a spectrum of, due diligence, let's say, that different districts have, and some are very, very tough to get through. Some are a little bit easier, but fundamentally, they are all kind of aligned on basic principles of don't send PII to the LLMs, use third-party LLM providers that are trusted, and other sort of basic privacy safeguards that really any software company should be following.
Yeah, for sure. Well, those were the questions that I had for you for this time. But one last one, which we always like to end with. When you think about the future of learning, what gives you the most hope, and what do you feel like is going to be the role of CourseMojo as we move into that future?
Yeah, I think the ability of these LLMs to not only provide that scaffolding and sort of personalized support that the students need, but also to provide higher levels of analysis on the student work is going to open up all sorts of possibilities for educators at every level of the system. So teachers are going to be able to see what their students are doing in a more clear way. Leaders within the school are going to be able to see what all of their teachers are doing in all of their classrooms. And district leaders are then going to be able to see what all of their schools are doing. And, it was much for many, many years, you needed to be collecting a lot of data and parsing it and processing it in the right way in order to get insights that would actually help you improve the education system. That cycle of the collecting the data and running the analysis is getting so much faster because of the quality of analysis that these LLM tools can give. And that's what I'm really excited about is just that view, I think, of whatever part of the system you're looking at as an educator is going to get so much more clear than it used to be. And then there's other things that can kind of wrap into this as well. So in terms of like where CourseMojo's future is, if we are able to help teachers with assessments or prepare for tests, or there's a lot of ways we can kind of like make a fully integrated product that can touch a lot of the different aspects of teaching and learning, not just the in the moment in the classroom stuff, but larger picture things in education. I think that's really where we're headed, and integrating AI kind of at every level to make it not only easier but better and faster for students and educators to get the help that they need.
Yeah. Are there any other closing thoughts that you want to provide?
I guess just, in general, I would encourage anyone in this space to try to be intentional in the same way we're trying to be intentional about using these tools. Like other technologies that humans have invented, AI can be used for the good or for the bad. And it's important that we in education use it for the good. And unfortunately, it's very easy actually to use them for the bad. We talked about hallucinations being an issue. These image and video generators that have come out in the last several months are incredibly high quality. You can use them to fool people. You can use the text generators to fool people as well. And so in addition to being intentional about how you use AI in the classroom, I think we also owe it to not just kids, but actually adults too in the world to really emphasize how these tools can be used for good, but also can be used in harmful ways, and to be able to, as humans, distinguish those and use them for the betterment of our world instead of bringing it down.
Very well said. Definitely agree. Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for your time, and thanks for joining Chalk and Code.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Thanks for tuning in. If today's conversation sparked new insights or challenged your thinking, we'd love to hear from you.
Visit flexion.us for more information and join us here next time on Chalk and Code.